From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, security gang. Welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast. Great to be with all y'all this Thursday morning, August 22nd, 2024. A busy and packed show for all y'all today, highlighting a lot of vulnerabilities. I do have a special guest joining us on the show here in just a little bit. My good friend, Brian Penny, whose music you just enjoyed, actually. In fact, he was kind enough to share that song with me that essentially became the opening song to the show. So he'll be joining us later to talk about post-quantum cryptography. Beyond making amazing music, he's also a genius when it comes to cryptography. So he'll be joining us to kind of break down the NIST story and so much more on today's show. Let's go ahead and get the show going. If you're tuning in, we're live on all your favorite platforms. So let's go ahead and kick off the show with our tradition, a double espresso. I've got a single espresso this morning. It's been one of those mornings. Coffee cup cheers, y'all. Let's go ahead and get started with vulnerabilities this morning, because that's really what's kind of occupying and top of mind as we got ready. A Jenkins open source automation server is still being actively exploited 7 months after its initial disclosure. Now, this specific Jenkins has a issue that was disclosed way back, almost in January. It's a path traversal vulnerability that would allow attackers to read arbitrary files on its controller system. It was assigned a CVE 2024-23897. It earned a critical CVSS score of 9.8 out of 10. And you think of Jenkins, you understand that that's significant. Well, this was reported in January. There's a delay in getting a patch done, and there's still 45,000 exposed instances that have not implemented the basic fix even before a patch is being applied. And so this is extremely significant. It's something that kind of shows you, one, the challenge of patching. Number two, the amount of vulnerabilities that really come at a practitioner. Like from my point of view, right? You'll see them, they're in the hundreds and the thousands, sometimes in the tens of thousands, depending on the size of your enterprise. And I've seen enterprises with tens of thousands of vulnerabilities, and you're trying to really buy teams in order to help you kind of patch those vulnerabilities and take care of them. And that becomes extremely, extremely difficult. And there's an aspect to this of essentially the way you have to build your security program, the way you have to evangelize and market and then implement your security program is through not only champions, but people who are able on your team to go in and actually also carry some of the load. So there's that. More attacks of larger scales have occurred over the summer. Intel broker used this CVE to obtain credentials, which then they used to breach a corporate GitHub account. I mean, again, just one event after the other here. If you're one of the 45,000 people who have not done this, please make sure to get at it right now. GitHub, for their end, sticking with the theme here, right? They've released an urgent fix for several security defects. In fact, a trio all in all that addressed the GitHub Enterprise Server product, warning attackers could exploit this flaw to gain site administrator privileges. CVEs have been assigned, with the major one being CVE 2024-6800, that's 6800. Covers a vulnerability that would allow an attacker to manipulate the SAML SSO authentication to provision or gain access to an account with site admin privileges. It's been given a CVSS score of 9.5 and is described with a XML signature wrapping bug in the GitHub Enterprise Server when using SAML authentication. All in all, any version prior to 3.14 was fixed. So you want to make sure you get that address. Sorry, any version 3.4. It affects all version of GitHub Enterprise servers prior to 3.14. So you want to make sure you're at that version. The additional versions are in the show notes. Go check that out there as well. Google also released for their end an emergency security update to patch a 0-day vulnerability tagged as an exploited attack, meaning there's active exploitation of this in your Chrome browsers at this time. Google's aware that the exploit for CVE 2024-7971 does exist in the wild. The 0-day vulnerability is caused by a type confusion weakness in the Chrome V8 JavaScript engine. Researchers with the Microsoft Threat Intelligence Center and Microsoft Security Response reported it to Google on Monday. It's Thursday morning, it was fixed. This was published last night, so Wednesday afternoon. So they were able to get on it pretty quick. You want to make sure you go to your Chrome menu, help about Google Chrome, and let the update finish, then hit the relaunch button in order to ensure that you've mitigated this specific vulnerability. This is the 9th total 0-day for Chrome this year, and we're only in August. So that's about a little over one a month. Not too shabby there. So NIST last week released their post-quantum cryptography, kind of bringing out three new algorithms to help you deal with post-quantum. And the feedback I got from a lot of you was, what's going on here? So I reached out to Brian Penny. He's the co-founder and CEO of Kloch Technologies. For the sake of transparency for all of our audience members, I'm on their board. That's why I reached out to Brian. I'm on their board of advisors, not their board of directors. And I work with him in my current role on several projects that we work on. And I said, hey, Brian, would you like to come on the show and kind of break this down? He said, absolutely. And so here's our conversation. I hope this will help you kind of take this all in. All right, gang. Joining me on the show today is my good friend, Brian Penny. He's the co-founder and CEO of Kloch Technologies. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Great. So I'm happy to have you on. We're talking NIST post-quantum cryptography. Obviously, NIST last week dropped kind of the 3 new standards for post-quantum cryptography. What's your take on those? What should we know as security practitioners?
I think they dropped the 3 algorithms they picked are asymmetric algorithms, and they're staying away from symmetric algorithms because there's an argument as long as the key management system is good for most symmetric algorithms, they could be post-quantum. So NIST was concentrating on how do we establish that connection between 2 different points with these asymmetric algorithms, because as we all know, Shor's algorithm is probably going to be able to do prime factorization really quick.
Yeah, that kind of brings up something else that I saw in the post-quantum report called crypto agility. Yeah. Now, mind you, I think for a lot of our listeners, cryptography and encryption is something we kind of understand, but we don't really dab into. What's crypto agility? What should we know about it?
The idea is, since there's a lot of unknowns when it comes to quantum, we're going to want to design our systems to be able to have the encryption swapped out, either the encryption itself or the key management part of it. And we want to make it so the system is more built around the idea of building blocks, and we can swap out the encryption if need be. Because right now, a lot of systems, the encryption is so built into the system that changing it out is very prohibitive. So we need to have it more like, hey, this is a firmware update, and be able to do it. I do think that is a lot harder in practice than what they are thinking at NIST.
Yeah, there's a lot of theory behind this yet. These are all kind of theoretically supposed to be working. And I say that again, theoretically, for our audience members to actually understand. Brian, you've been doing this for nearly a decade as the co-founder and CEO of Kloch. What stands out to you about the post-quantum cryptography standards issued by NIST, and what should every practitioner know as we start to prepare for the era of post-quantum cryptography?
I think one of the things that stands out to me specifically is they were highlighting encryption systems and key management systems that are very hard math problems, or with Kyber, you have learning with errors. Like it's math things. And so it's working on the idea of, hey, we're going to make extremely hard algorithms. We're going to make it so it's a hard math problem to solve. I think there's an element to that might be a dangerous path with quantum computers, because they're going to be really good at math. So that's why crypto agility is so important. I think the other thing is actual implementation is going to be tricky. And I think we need to really think about things like, how much processor load is this actually going to have on our system when we're dealing with it? What's the processor load? How's it going to go? Because especially with legacy systems, we can't expect some of the legacy hardware that is installed in critical infrastructure to be able to support these new algorithms in a proper sense.
Yeah, those are all great points. Folks, Brian Penny is the co-founder and CEO of Kloch Technologies. You can check him out online, kloch.com. For the sake of all clarity, I'm on their board of advisors. I've been working with these guys for 4 years, so I couldn't think of anyone better to bring on the show to talk about this. Brian, thanks for taking the time to be here today. Really appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks for having me. Good seeing you.
You too. Bye. All right, so I hope that helped kind of clarify a little bit about post-quantum, and I want to do a deeper dive with Brian, but there's that. All right, go to our Substack, jamesazar.substack.com. You can find all the latest and greatest there. Now we're on the tail end of the show here. Let's go ahead and talk about some of these last stories. A few of them I find extremely amusing. So, one, a vulnerability in the Microsoft Copilot Studio could have been exploited to access sensitive information on internal infrastructure, according to Tenable. The flaw, CVE 2024-38206, was described as a critical information disclosure bug. It's been fully mitigated. Microsoft said in their own advisory, there's no any sort of explanation that says someone actually used this. It's more of like, yeah, there was an issue. It could have been really, really bad. It wasn't, but hey, we're going to write a report on it. We're going to put it out, and James is going to talk about it on the show. So goal achieved. There's that. ESET is warning about a new phishing tactic that's targeting iOS and Android users with web applications mimicking legitimate banking software. They're trying to bypass security protections and steal banking login credentials. According to ESET, the criminals are using progressive web applications, which are websites bundled to look like standalone applications, while on Android they also look like web APKs, which come from Google Play. Although, Google just stopped their Google Play bug bounty program because it doesn't work and their policies suck at Google Play. I've said that numerous times on the show. The threat actor behind the phishing campaign were combining automated voice calls, social media advertising, and SMS messages to distribute links to third-party websites that are hosting the fraudulent applications, hoping to trick victims into sharing their login credentials to their mobile banking units. This was primarily focused in the Czech Republic, also in Hungary, and the country of Georgia, not the great state of Georgia, which I call home. So something to be mindful of. And a man after my own heart, this 39-year-old man from Somerset, Kentucky. He got 81 months in jail for identity theft and faking his own death in a government registry system. So Jesse Kiff used stolen credentials to access the Hawaii death registry system to register himself as a deceased person. The reason was to avoid paying child support obligations. Can't make this stuff. I mean, I love our country. I love America. I love it. I love it. These stories, you kind of read them and you go, only in America is this possible. Only in America would someone with ingenuity, opportunity, go and create a case of his own death in order not to pay child support application. Gift then completed a state of Hawaii death certificate worksheet, assigned himself as the medical certificate for the case, and certified his death using the digital signature of the doctor. The action resulted in the man appearing deceased in the U.S. government databases, effectively nullifying his outstanding child support obligations, which was the main motive behind that. He also used a false social security number to apply for credit and debit accounts at financial institutions. Obviously, once you're dead, you can't be who you are and you're banking. So he had to create kind of a new identity, and that's the identity theft part. All in all, the total damage, including unpaid child support, was estimated to be around $195,000. I'm sorry, but this is so good. He's got 3 years of supervised release after spending 69 months in. He'll spend 69 months in jail. He's got to serve at least 85% of his sentence, and then he's got to have, so 5.5 years, and he'll be placed under supervision for 3 years after that. So, ingenuity, y'all, ingenuity. And in our final news of the day, in Moscow, detained a scientist a really long time ago. In fact, Artem Korisolov, who they are charging with treason, allegedly for launching DDoS attacks and providing Ukraine with intelligence on Russian troop movement, launching DDoS attacks on Russians within Russia. Apparently, he was arrested really in the winter based on some of the footage that was released. The guy was arrested. They were showing him, face down in the snow. It's August. It's not snowing anywhere in Russia right now. So obviously, they're now feeling comfortable to release it. They could have been, it could have met his purpose, meaning they could have arrested him. They could have used him to feed the Ukrainians fake information. And now they've decided to publish it in order to kind of deal a blow to Ukraine for whatever reasons, battlefield type of stuff. And by the way, in espionage, fairly common. You catch someone, you may not want your adversary to know you caught them. You may want to have your adversary fed false information for a period of time. have them make plans, have them become a really high value assets for them. You're feeding them everything. You're watching them actually take action. And then you publish it when it becomes kind of a battle of the field. And we know Ukraine in the Russia-Ukraine war that's going on right now. Ukraine has had some significant gains over the last several weeks and months with a large-scale drone attack on Moscow recently, with being able to go into parts of Russia and occupy territory there. So Russia may be trying to kind of shift the balance here a little bit, kind of throw their plans off, maybe buy some time so they can regroup is likely my guess to what's going on here. That's it for our show this morning. We'll be back Monday, 9 a.m. Eastern, live with all the latest and greatest. Until then, thanks so much for tuning in. Please make sure to subscribe, comment, like, and follow us on your favorite social media platforms. Have a great weekend. Have a great rest of your day. And most importantly, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.